She bought a forgotten cliffside mansion for just $6,000, hoping to flip it and save her son from eviction. But hidden inside the abandoned mansion was a secret vault sealed for over 60 years. What she uncovered would rewrite Hollywood history and expose truths powerful people tried to keep buried. This isn't just another abandoned mansion story. It's a fight for the truth. Before we start our story, make sure to subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to see how far this story reaches. The mist rolled in heavy over the shores of Oregon when Clara Morgan woke to the soft sobbing of her 8-year-old son, Liam, in the next room. She didn't have to ask why. The eviction notice had been impossible to hide, taped right across their apartment door the night before. Liam saw it, read it, and like all children, understood more than he should. Clara, 34, was a former wedding photographer, once thriving in San Francisco before the industry dried up. Now, in a crumbling town called Seabrook, she was broke, abandoned by her ex-husband, and clinging to a life held together by duct tape and whispered promises. Their mattress sagged like her hope, bought used and never replaced. Her camera gear was long gone pawned piece by piece to keep the lights on. What remained was a single cracked Canon and a lens she couldn't afford to replace. With 2 weeks left before they were homeless, Clara didn't need a miracle. She needed a lifeline. She kissed Liam's forehead, wiped away his tears, and told him they'd be okay. But deep down, she knew the truth. No one was coming to save them unless she found a way out herself. Clara dropped Liam off at school that morning with a smile she didn't feel, and a promise she wasn't sure she could keep pizza tonight. Okay, he nodded, clutching his frayed backpack. Too mature for his age. Too quiet for a boy who used to laugh all the time. As she watched him walk inside, something broke in her. She couldn't fail him. Not again. She walked the 5 blocks to Seabrook Public Library, the only place in town with free Wi-Fi and warmth that didn't come from a coin-fed heater. She took her usual seat in the far corner, surrounded by dusty encyclopedias and job seekers clinging to the edge like her. She opened a browser, typed in the usual searches: remote work for photographers, emergency housing, grants for single mothers. Nothing. Nothing real. Nothing fast. On impulse, she clicked to a county real estate auction site, a place she'd visited before, more out of fantasy than practicality. Crumbling shacks and tax-defaulted properties. But today, something stood out. Lot 027, Cliffside Spanish Colonial Mansion, Seabrook Bay, starting bid $6,000. Her brows knit. That had to be wrong. The property photo was blurry, shot from a distance. Vines curling up the sides like the house was being devoured, windows boarded, roof half collapsed. But the view, it overlooked the ocean. Oceanfront. Clara clicked through. No interior access permitted prior to sale. Sold as is. Buyer assumes all liability. Cash only. No inspections. No guarantees. She bit her lip. The house had been vacant for over 60 years. Built in 1946. Transferred to a private trust in 1953. The trust dissolved in 2012. Since then, nothing, no buyers, no interest. Locals avoided it. Her fingers hovered over her keyboard. She searched the address. Nothing concrete. But then, buried on page 5 of a paranormal discussion forum, she saw a thread titled, "The Forgotten Mansion on Ocean Bluff, Marilyn's Secret." Clara's heart stuttered. The posts were cryptic, rumors, unverified stories from elderly residents claiming that a famous starlet used to drive out to the coast to hide from the spotlight. Some swore they saw her. A few believed she owned the mansion secretly, under a trust The timeline matched. The house sealed since 1962, the year Marilyn Monroe died. Clara closed her laptop and stared out the rain-streaked window. Her mind was spinning. She didn't believe in ghosts, but she did believe in value hidden in forgotten places. If she could win the property, take photos, list it online, she might make enough to save her and Liam from the street, even as a teardown. Oceanfront land in Seabrook could fetch hundreds of thousands. It was insane, but she was out of sane options. The next 72 hours were chaos. Clara became a woman possessed. She called every past client begging for old invoices to be paid. Only one came through a hotelier in Bend who wired her $900 with an apology for being late, 6 months late. She pawned her last real possession, her mother's ring, for $180. She sold Liam's old crib, the one she couldn't bear to part with before, for another $200 on Craigslist. Her neighbor, Mrs. Johansson, gave her $500 in cash after hearing her story. No strings. Dear, just pay it forward one day. Clara signed a payday loan agreement with a predatory lender in a windowless office. The interest so high it felt like a crime. But they handed her $2,000 in greasy bills, and she took it. By Thursday night, Clara sat at her kitchen table, counting and recounting $600 in cash, hidden in an envelope beneath a bag of frozen peas in the freezer. Her hands trembled. Her stomach ached. She had one shot. Friday morning arrived cold and gray. Clara dressed in the one blazer she owned, ironed with a hair straightener, her slacks stitched at the knee. She braided her chestnut hair, applied concealer to hide the sleepless nights, and tried to look like someone who belonged in a government auction room. She left Liam with Mrs. Johansson, telling him she had a job interview. "Will it help us stay here?" he asked. "I hope so, baby." The county office was beige, fluorescent, and smelled like burnt coffee. 4 people showed up for the auction. Only one seemed remotely serious, a man in a tan suit with an expression like he'd rather be anywhere else. Clara sat in the back row, the envelope of cash heavy in her purse. Lot 27 was the final property. The clerk read the listing without much enthusiasm. Cliffside property, 7,000 square feet, ocean view, sold as is, vacant since 1962. Starting bid $6,000. Silence. Clara lifted her hand. 6,000! The clerk looked up. "Do I hear 6,500? "Nothing." Then, just as the second call echoed a voice from the back. 8,000. Clara turned. A man in a tailored navy suit stood in the doorway. Polished, late 40s, sharp smile, arrogant eyes. He walked in like he already owned the place. "Do I hear AI 500? The clerk asked. Clara's mouth went dry. She had only $600. She couldn't fight him. She couldn't outbid him. Her heart sank. Until the clerk's phone rang. He stepped outside with the man in the suit. 5 tense minutes passed. Then 10. Finally, the clerk returned, flushed and flustered. "The bidder has withdrawn. High bid remains at $6,000. Any others?" Silence. Sold to the woman in back. The gavel hit the desk like thunder. Clara sat frozen, stunned. She had just bought a cliffside mansion for $6,000, a house no one had entered in 60 years, and whatever waited inside was now hers. The keys jingled nervously in Clara's coat pocket as she approached the house 2 days later. The cliffside mansion, now technically hers, rose before her like a ghost caught between worlds. White stucco cracked and peeling, windows boarded and blackened, the front gate hanging loose like a broken jaw. Fog clung to the shoreline behind it, whispering against the rocks far below. Clara had left Liam with Mrs. Johansson again, promising to be home by dinner. She didn't mention that she was walking into a house no one had entered in 6 decades, or that rumors swirled online about strange lights, or a woman in white spotted near the bluff at dusk. She stepped cautiously through the arched stone gate, boots crunching on gravel overtaken by moss. Weeds grew waist-high. A rusted "No Trespassing" sign lay face down in the dirt. At the massive wooden front door, she fumbled with the tarnished key. It took 3 tries before the lock gave way with a groan. The door creaked open, exhaling dust and time. Darkness waited inside. Clara clicked on her flashlight. The beam landed on black and white tile floors, coated in grime, but unmistakably elegant. A chandelier, crusted with cobwebs, dangled precariously above. Furniture still lined the hallway, covered in white sheets that looked eerily like shrouds. "Jesus," she whispered. She hadn't expected the place to be preserved. The house wasn't empty. It was frozen. She moved cautiously, snapping photos as she went, old portraits blurred with dust, forgotten furniture carved in Art Deco flourishes, faded wallpaper curling like peeling skin. Her heart pounded with each creaking step. She climbed the sweeping staircase to the 2nd floor. The air grew colder. A musty scent clung to the walls. Salt, perfume, and decay. At the end of the hall stood a heavy double door. Clara's hand hovered over the knob. The master bedroom. She pushed it open and gasped. This room was different. Less dust. Fewer cobwebs. The curtains hadn't disintegrated the way the others had. A dressing table stood beneath a wide mirror, still holding bottles of perfume, some half full. Labels faded. A 4-poster bed loomed in the center, elegant and untouched. Clara crossed the room, flashlight beam skimming across everything. She paused at the vanity and opened a small jewelry box. Inside was a bracelet, delicate gold links with tiny charms, a heart, a mask, a seashell. And then she saw it. A single hairbrush, its bristles still tangled with blonde hair. Her stomach flipped. A chill slid down her spine. "Okay," she whispered. "Focus." She turned toward the closet, hoping to find something that could date the property more clearly, perhaps old clothes or a suitcase. But when she opened the walk-in door, she froze again. Something wasn't right. The back wall of the closet looked newer. A smooth, pale surface that didn't match the crumbling plaster elsewhere. She moved closer, running her fingers along it. Hollow. Clara knocked lightly, definitely hollow. Her heart began to race. She searched the edges for seams, and there, barely noticeable, was a thin gap running vertically near the right-hand corner. She pressed. Nothing. Pressed again, harder. A soft click. Clara stumbled backward as a hidden panel popped inward, revealing a narrow passage. Her flashlight cut into the darkness. Stone stairs, spiraling downward. "Jesus, what is this?" She hesitated. Rationality screamed, "Don't go down there." But desperation whispered louder. What if this is it? What if this is everything? She descended carefully, one step at a time. The stone beneath her feet was cold and worn smooth. The air grew damp, the smell musty, ancient. At the bottom, the stairs opened into a small vault about 20 feet square, carved into the cliffside rock. Her flashlight revealed dusty glass cases, garment bags, metal filing cabinets, and crates stacked in the shadows. She stepped forward slowly, mouth dry. Inside the first glass case was a mannequin wearing a white pleated dress, the kind you'd see in old Hollywood photos. Her breath caught. Could it be? No. It looked like the subway grate dress from the 7-Year Itch. In the next case, a shimmering pink gown, beaded and theatrical. She'd seen it before, too. Marilyn's gown from Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. But how? She turned to the garment bags, unzipped one carefully. Perfume, still clinging to the fabric. She pulled back the protective layer and revealed a vintage cardigan, silk blouse, a day dress from the early 60s. All in pristine condition. Clara's knees went weak. She dropped to the ground and pulled open a filing cabinet. Dozens of folders, neatly labeled. Personal letters, contracts, photographs, medical records. She opened a folder marked Photographs, Private, and found black and white prints of a woman smiling on the beach, reading in a garden, and laughing in candlelight unpublished photos of Marilyn Monroe. Clara sat down on the cold stone, overwhelmed. This wasn't just memorabilia. This was a secret archive, one no one had seen in decades. She reached for her phone with trembling hands and began snapping photos of everything, every corner, every dress, every folder. Then she saw it. A canister. Metal. Labeled in fading handwriting. August 4th, 1962. Personal recording. Her hands went numb. That was the day before Marilyn died. Clara held the canister close, her mind spiraling. She had come to this house to escape eviction. But she'd just uncovered a vault that could change everything, not just her life, but Hollywood history. And maybe, just maybe, the truth. Clara sat in the center of the hidden vault, surrounded by shadows and secrets. The silence pressed in, thick and heavy. Her phone's battery was almost dead, but she couldn't bring herself to leave just yet. The film canister labeled August 4th, 1962, personal recording rested beside her, along with several folders of handwritten letters, photographs, and a velvet-lined box containing what looked like Marilyn Monroe's personal charm bracelet. She was no longer thinking like a desperate mother looking to flip a property. She was thinking like a woman who had just stepped into a conspiracy buried for 6 decades. Clara reached for one of the journals, a worn, leather-bound book with a small gold clasp. Inside were pages of Marilyn's handwriting, filled with raw, aching entries. Some pages were smeared as if tears had fallen there long ago. I'm so tired of pretending, of being her. Marilyn is a mask I can't take off anymore. They want me quiet, pretty, compliant. But I know things. I hear things. They don't think I understand. But I do. Clara flipped ahead. The house on the cliff is mine. They don't know about it. That's where I keep the real me. She closed the journal, her heart thudding in her chest. This vault wasn't a coincidence. It was a sanctuary, built with purpose. Marilyn had been preparing for something, or perhaps hiding from someone. That changed everything. This wasn't a collection of forgotten memorabilia. It was an insurance policy. Back at her apartment, Clara spent hours uploading every photo she took to a secure cloud server. She didn't know who she could trust. But she knew one thing for certain now. She had stumbled into something dangerous. She needed a professional, someone with credibility, someone who knew this history better than anyone. After scouring forums, articles, and citations from Monroe documentaries, she found Dr. Eleanor Chen, a respected historian who'd written extensively about Monroe's life and mysterious death. Clara drafted an email, heart pounding. Dear Dr. Chen, my name is Clara Morgan. I recently acquired a property on Ocean Bluff in Seabrook. Inside, I found what appears to be a vault containing original items belonging to Marilyn Monroe, including personal letters, clothing, journals, and an unreleased film canister dated the day before her death. I am reaching out for help with authentication and discretion. I believe this discovery is historically significant and possibly dangerous. Please contact me as soon as possible. She didn't expect a reply quickly, but the phone rang less than 2 hours later. Ms. Morgan, the voice was sharp. Precise. This is Dr. Eleanor Chen. I received your email. Tell me exactly what you found. Clara explained everything, her voice trembling, her words rushing. When she got to the part about the film, the line went quiet for several seconds. Finally, Dr. Chen said, Ms. Morgan, you may have just discovered the missing piece in one of the most debated deaths of the 20th century. Clara's stomach dropped. Are you saying? I'm saying there have always been rumors, of recordings, of Marilyn keeping records of people in power, politicians, studio executives, mob figures. If your discovery contains proof, then yes, this is bigger than you know, and people may want it. Buried. They agreed to meet in Seabrook 2 days later. Clara couldn't sleep. She lay in bed beside a softly breathing Liam, the weight of what she'd found making her heart feel heavy and hollow at the same time. This wasn't about flipping a property anymore. This was about telling the truth. But at what cost? Dr. Chen arrived with 2 experts, a film archivist named Thomas and a forensic historian named Sarah. The moment they stepped into the mansion's master bedroom, all pretense of skepticism vanished. This room, Sarah murmured, running her hand along the doorframe, hasn't been disturbed in decades. They descended the hidden staircase together, flashlights in hand. As the vault came into view, Dr. Chen stopped in her tracks. My God, she whispered, it's real. For the next 6 hours, they catalogued, photographed, and analyzed everything. Thomas handled the film with reverence. This hasn't been touched since the 60s, he muttered. We'll need a clean room to digitize it. Carefully, Sarah examined the garments, confirming stitch patterns and wear consistent with Monroe's known wardrobe. This isn't a replica collection. These are originals. And Dr. Chen stoic. Analytical, Dr. Chen grew pale as she read through a letter dated July 1962, written by Monroe herself. If I disappear, it wasn't an accident. I've kept records. I've recorded things. They think I'm weak, but I'm not. The house on Ocean Bluff is the only place I'm safe. Or the only place the truth might survive. Dr. Chen looked up, her voice tight. Clara, this isn't just a discovery. This is a liability, a dangerous one. If certain names are in those recordings, if those journals mention political secrets, someone might do anything to stop them from coming out. Clara's throat dried. Then what do I do? You protect it, and you protect yourself. Starting now? That night, as Clara locked the front door of the mansion and walked to her car, her flashlight caught something across the road. A black sedan, engine off, parked under the trees. No lights? No movement? Just watching. She tightened her grip on her phone. Someone knew, and whatever they were waiting for. It had already begun. By the following morning, Clara Morgan knew 2 things for sure. 1. The vault was real and worth more than she could comprehend. 2. Someone else knew it existed. And they were watching. The black sedan was gone by sunrise, but the chill it left behind remained. Clara hadn't slept. She sat at the kitchen table with her laptop, rereading every email, every photo upload, every note Dr. Chen had given her. She wasn't just a photographer anymore. She was a whistleblower, the accidental keeper of history's best-kept secret. Across the table, Liam munched cereal, humming to himself, completely unaware that the walls of their tiny apartment were now too thin to hold the weight of what Clara carried. Her phone buzzed. Dr. Chen? I've spoken with my attorney. She said, You need legal protection. Clara, this discovery, if authenticated and made public, will invite lawsuits, accusations, and potentially worse. But if we do this carefully, The right way. It could change everything. Clara swallowed. Everything. For you? For Marilyn's legacy? And maybe even for history. Later that afternoon, Clara and Dr. Chen met with David Klein, a high-profile attorney in Los Angeles specializing in estate disputes and high-value artifact discoveries. His office overlooked Wilshire Boulevard, sleek and modern, the kind of place Clara had only seen in movies. She felt out of place in her second-hand blazer, clutching the USB drive with photos from the vault like it was a bomb. "Let me be clear," David said as he reviewed the documents. "You own the property. That's not in dispute. But the contents of the vault, that's a legal gray area." He leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. Technically, any assets belonging to Marilyn Monroe should have passed through her estate in 1963. But if this vault was never listed in probate, if it was unknown and abandoned, it might fall under California's abandoned property statute. That gives us leverage. But we'll be challenged. Clara's heart thudded. By who? The Strasbourg estate, he said bluntly. The heirs of her acting coach who inherited much of her estate. Auction houses, private collectors, possibly even film studios. Not to mention political descendants. If those recordings are as sensitive as Dr. Chen believes. And if I lose? David hesitated. Worst case, they seize everything. Best case, you retain rights, but face years of court battles and media scrutiny. But there is one alternative. He slid a document across the table. A press conference proposal. Clara blinked. Go public. Exactly. We control the narrative. We show the world the truth before anyone can twist it. Once the media sees the evidence, it becomes much harder for anyone to silence you legally or otherwise. Dr. Chen nodded. Sunlight is your armor. Clara, you'd be protected by public interest. It's riskier, but it may be the only way to save both the truth and yourself. That night, Clara walked the beach near the mansion. The tide crashed against the cliffside below. Wind tangled her hair. She thought about Marilyn's journal entries, the desperation in her words, the quiet terror of a woman trying to escape the machinery of fame and power. And she thought about Liam. He deserved more than a mother hiding from shadows. He deserved a mother who stood up and said, "This is the truth, and I'm not afraid." She looked toward the old house on the hill, its silhouette against the night sky like a monument to forgotten voices. She pulled out her phone and called Dr. Chen. "Let's do it," she said, her voice steadier than it had been in days. "Let's bring it all into the light." Within 48 hours, they had a venue, a small press conference room at the Los Angeles Historic Film Society, backed by a panel of experts including Dr. Chen, a textile historian, and a forensic document examiner. They selected 3 key items to present publicly. The white pleated dress from The 7-Year Itch, authenticated down to the stitching and wear pattern. A journal entry written in Marilyn's hand, where she wrote, "If anything happens to me, I hope someone finds this place. The vault is my voice." The canister labeled August 4th, 1962, which remained unopened, but was cited as possible audio evidence from the day before her death. They created a private preview for select journalists and documentarians. Those who attended left visibly shaken by what they'd seen. The headlines began trickling out. Hidden Marilyn Monroe Vault uncovered in Oregon. Cliffside Mansion. Private recordings and secret journals could rewrite Hollywood history. Single mother discovers $200 million treasure with political consequences. Clara's inbox exploded. So did the threats. A private number called her late one night. A man's voice, smooth, low, and veiled in power, spoke just one sentence. "Some stories are better left untold." She hung up. Her hands trembled, but her resolve unshakable. The press conference was set for Friday, and the world was about to find out that Clara Morgan, once a broke, desperate mother clinging to survival, was now the guardian of the biggest Hollywood secret ever buried. And she was done being afraid. The morning of the press conference, Clara Morgan stood behind the curtain of the media room, heart pounding so hard she could hear it over the hum of microphones and the shuffle of reporters finding their seats. 3 weeks ago, she was picking up spilled Cheerios off a cracked linoleum floor, wondering if she'd be evicted before the next Friday. Now, she was about to face CNN, the BBC, the Washington Post, and a row of forensic experts ready to back her claim. She wore the same blazer from the auction, the one she'd once considered giving to Goodwill. Now it felt like armor. Dr. Chen squeezed her hand. They'll listen. Clara, you're not just revealing Marilyn's truth. You're showing what a woman can do when the world gives her nothing, and she chooses to fight back anyway. The moderator introduced her. Cameras flashed. Reporters leaned forward. Clara stepped to the podium, voice shaking but not breaking. My name is Clara Morgan. She began. Just weeks ago, I was facing eviction with my 8-year-old son. I bought a forgotten mansion in Seabrook, Oregon for $6,000, hoping I could fix it up and flip it for rent money. What I found was something else entirely. She told them everything about the vault, the dresses, the journals, the unreleased film reels. She didn't dramatize. She didn't speculate. She spoke with the quiet conviction of a woman who had nothing left to lose but her integrity. Then she read aloud from Marilyn's final journal. They will say I overdosed, that I was sad and reckless. But I am not reckless. I am afraid. I have reason to be. Silence swept the room like a cold wind. Some reporters blinked back tears. When she finished, Dr. Chen and the experts walked through authentication results. Everything was real, documented, preserved. The implications, explosive. And then came the questions. Will you release the recordings? Are any names linked to current political figures? Have you received threats? Clara didn't flinch. Yes, and yes. She didn't say who had called her, or that someone had offered her a 7-figure sum to walk away. She didn't mention the black sedan parked across from Liam's school last Tuesday. But her final answer was clear. I won't be silenced. Not for money, not for fear, not for anyone. That night, Clara tucked Liam into bed in a borrowed hotel room, their tiny apartment now under 24-hour surveillance. He clung to her tighter than usual. Are we in trouble? He asked. She brushed his hair back gently. No, baby. We're telling the truth, and sometimes the truth scares people. He was quiet for a moment. You're not scared? She smiled. I'm scared all the time, but I still do what's right. Liam blinked up at her. Then you're like a hero. And that was when it hit her. She hadn't just stumbled onto history. She had become part of it. In the weeks that followed, Clara's life transformed at lightning speed. She signed with an attorney to protect the rights to the vault's contents. Not to sell them, but to preserve them. Donations flooded in from supporters around the world. A former Hollywood producer offered pro bono help to create a documentary about the vault. Clara agreed only if it told Marilyn's real story, not a sensationalized version. Dr. Chen and Clara founded the Monroe Legacy Foundation, a non-profit aimed at protecting the items, opening a public archive, and funding programs that supported women in film, single mothers, and mental health advocacy. And at every step, Clara insisted, this isn't about profit. It's about voice. It's about truth. It's about letting Marilyn speak for herself. Finally, the media called her the woman who gave Marilyn her voice back. But Clara didn't want fame. She wanted impact. On a quiet afternoon, Clara returned to the mansion. Restoration had begun slowly, carefully. The vault remained sealed under tight security, But the goal was clear: it would one day become a museum, not just to a movie star, but to the woman beneath the makeup. As she stood again in the master bedroom, Clara placed a hand on the vanity. "I hope I'm doing this right," she whispered. And in that silence, she felt something strange. Peace. A month later, Clara gave her first university speech at UCLA. The room was filled with young women, aspiring filmmakers, historians, journalists. She stood at the podium, no notes this time, and said, "I didn't plan to be here. I was just trying to keep a roof over my son's head. But the truth has a way of finding people who are desperate enough to listen." Marilyn left behind a vault. But more than that, she left behind a challenge to see her not as a tragedy, but as a human being who fought to matter. That's what we all want, isn't it? To matter. The standing ovation left her shaking. Not from nerves. From gratitude. She'd been broken, forgotten, afraid. Now she was none of those things. She was heard. 2 years later, the mansion on Ocean Bluff looked nothing like the haunted ruin Clara Morgan first stepped into. Where vines once choked the walls, wildflowers now bloomed. The roof gleamed with new tiles, carefully restored to match the original Spanish colonial style. The windows no longer stared blankly out to sea, they shimmered, catching sunlight and sending it dancing across the polished stone of the front patio. But the biggest transformation had nothing to do with wood or plaster. It was what the house had become: a beacon of truth. Inside, the Marilyn Monroe Legacy Museum opened to a full crowd on a cool August morning. The line to enter wrapped around the block. Tour buses pulled up. College students, senior citizens, filmmakers, feminists, journalists all waited patiently to walk through the halls of history. At the center of it all stood Clara Morgan, in a simple blue dress, a small pin of Marilyn's profile on her lapel, and Liam, now 10 years old, standing proudly beside her. "This is it," she whispered to him as the ribbon was cut. The crowd cheered. Liam grinned. "You built this, Mom." Clara knelt to meet his eyes. "No, she did. I just made sure the world saw it." The museum wasn't flashy, it was intentional. Marilyn's journals preserved in glass. Pages rotated monthly showed the thoughts of a woman far deeper than the world gave her credit for. She wrote about politics, loneliness, books she loved, and the pressure of being Marilyn instead of just Norma Jean. The vault remained open to visitors behind clear barriers and security. Of course. But guests could walk down the same stone spiral staircase Clara had once descended in fear, now lined with photographs of Marilyn's real life, laughing on the beach, reading poetry, writing letters. In the center of the room stood a single artifact in a spotlight, the pink beaded gown from Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. Not because it was the most famous, but because, as Dr. Chen once said, she wore it when the world only saw sparkle. But inside, she was already planning her escape. Each tour ended with a recording not from the infamous tape still sealed due to legal battles, but from one of Marilyn's private letters, read by a voice actress who sounded uncannily like her. "I wanted to be known, not watched, not consumed, just known." The room always fell silent. Many left in tears. The museum's mission grew quickly, with funds from donations, ticket sales, and licensing managed with careful integrity. The Marilyn Monroe Legacy Foundation expanded its outreach. They funded scholarships for young women in film, journalism, and archival studies, mental health initiatives focused on creative professionals, legal aid for single mothers navigating custody and support battles, and a national campaign to reform probate and abandoned property laws, inspired by Clara's legal war over the vault's ownership. Every press interview, every documentary, every article circled back to the same message: Marilyn Monroe was not a victim. She was a fighter, and her voice had finally been restored. In one corner of the museum sat a small framed photo that few noticed unless they read the plaque carefully. It showed Clara and Liam on their first day at the mansion before the press, before the lawyers, before the spotlight. She held his hand, standing in the doorway of the dilapidated house, exhaustion and uncertainty in her eyes. The plaque beneath it read, "The moment before the world changed, August 12th, 20XX. She didn't walk in to be a hero. She walked in because she had nowhere else to go. Sometimes, that's where the greatest stories begin." On the museum's second anniversary, Clara gave a keynote speech to a packed audience under the Pacific sunset. She stood on the outdoor terrace, ocean wind in her hair, Marilyn's restored home glowing behind her. 2 years ago, she began, "I was alone, broke, desperate. I didn't believe in destiny. I barely believed in tomorrow. But then I opened a door that was never meant to be found. And I found not just a vault, but a woman who had fought harder than the world ever knew." She paused. "And because I listened, we're all here today." The audience was still emotional, awed. Clara continued, "I didn't do this to become famous. I did it because I couldn't walk away from the truth. Because a little boy was watching me, and I wanted him to grow up knowing that courage isn't about having power. It's about choosing integrity when you have nothing left. Marilyn left a vault. I left my fear, and both of those things changed everything." As the crowd rose in applause, Liam ran up and hugged her tightly. "You did it. Mom," he whispered. Clara blinked back tears, looking at the sea and sky before her. "No," she said softly. "We did. Anyone can change the narrative if they're brave enough to speak when it's easier to stay silent." As the sun set over the Seabrook coast, Clara Morgan stood once more at the top of the cliff, where it all began. Not to photograph the view, but to design something far bigger, a place where truth would never be buried again. She knew now the story she uncovered didn't belong to her alone. It belonged to every woman told to stay quiet, every mother who'd been overlooked, every forgotten voice that deserved to be heard. The single mom who once pawned her last camera to keep the lights on had become the guardian of a legacy that changed the world. Because for Clara, and for those who come after, the truth was never something to fear. It was something to fight for. And now, finally, it had a home. The end. Up next, 2 more powerful stories are waiting for you. Click to keep discovering truth with us, and don't forget to subscribe if you believe some voices should never be silenced.